My name is Lori Duffy, 88 Haverhill Ave. I live in North Kingstown, and I also operate a small private practice in North Kingstown as well. And actually, I'm here today as my role as a clinical social worker who specializes in children and the mental health of children and families. So I'm here asking the school committee to not cower to the threats and demands of those that are here opposing anti-racist education and school groups that aim to help students have a safe place to gather, talk, and organize. When I saw a notice this morning from the group Teachers Against Indoctrination, to be honest, my hands began to tremble. Immediately, I thought of the young people who I've worked with over the years, both here in North Kingstown and throughout the state, who never feel like they belong, who never feel like they're good enough, who have to work harder to prove themselves, who are called horrible names, who are pushed aside, who keep their heads down and try not to be noticed. I also know that there's higher incidence of suicide in our LGBT community, and just calling a transgender person by their chosen name gives them hope to live one more day. I've talked to families in this very town and can report that yes, Black youth are called the N-word by their peers, teachers calling out students unexpectedly to speak on behalf of their culture, BIPOC children being labeled as disruptive, while white children with similar behaviors are labeled energetic. Now, that being said, I can also name 100 more ways that teachers are amazing and wonderful, how administrators and staff support our young people. I myself have many close relationships with teachers here, and I see their hard work and diligence all the time. But just because NK is a good school doesn't mean we can't make things better. Some of you have asked why incidents are not reported in the school, and it's because people are scared. Scared that they won't be believed, scared that they'll be put under the microscope. And I think we can all say that based on what this group, Teachers Against Indoctrination, are trying to do, we can see why people might feel that way. The school committee allows this group to cause a healthy and important student group to be shut down. They're not going to stop. They're going to continue to spread lies, false information, in an attempt to scare parents and staff into thinking things that aren't true. When we're scared, we jump to conclusions. We don't take time to learn for ourselves. When I taught at Rhode Island College, I taught critical thinking skills, the 3 A's. My students knew them well. Assess the information, ask questions, and assert your opinion. I'm asking the school committee to call on their own critical thinking skills and ask yourself if a BIPOC and LGBTQ school group is really, and I quote, separating children and teachers by skin color and privilege and social engineering, as this group has reported. I can show you their action alert, calling their supporters to be here tonight. I'm asking you, don't listen to the propaganda that's meant to divide us and scare you. Support these kids. Give them a safe place to talk, gather, and meet. Support these kids and think of their mental health for all of the decisions that you guys are making. They are not hurting anyone, but they are being attacked right now, and I hope you protect them. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, if you could just state your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Carlos Hernandez, and I live at 1259 Lafayette Road. First, I just want to say thank you for the very amazing words that Lori just shared, but I'll keep mine very short and sweet. I wanted to come here to voice my support and emphasize the importance of the DEI subcommittee and the Racial Equity Alliance. My daughter is a freshman that attends this school and also attends the Racial Equity Alliance affinity group, and I know that some may disagree with this symbol of progress that these groups represent, but I agree with Lori that it should not distract us from how necessary these groups are to ensure that we are being as fair, inclusive, and equitable as possible to all of our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ramona Bessinger. I just want to first thank NK Schools for providing a
Sorry,
diverse...
if you could name and address for us.
Oh,
Sorry.
Ramona Bessinger, 437 David Avenue, Jamestown, Rhode Island.
Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Okay, that's okay. I just wanted to thank the NK School Department for providing an excellent, diverse, equitable, and inclusive education for all 4 of my children. I currently have 1 child still in the system. There is absolutely no indication to me as a mother and a teacher, by the way, of 22 years, that this district has any deficits in equity, diversity, or inclusion. In fact, I feel that this district has gone above and beyond to comply with all of the RIDE mandates and to be inclusive and kind and decent to all children, including my own, one who has an IEP. What I would like is to be a part of the DEI discussion as an educator, but also as a mother, because the proposals that are currently on the table regarding critical race theory have nothing to do with fairness and equity and inclusion. In fact, they exclude. I am a teacher of 22 years, and I am seeing the new curriculum materials roll into the school where I teach. And quite frankly, I was absolutely shocked and disgusted at the materials that I have seen. They're dangerous. They are excluding a huge part of history, and they need to be looked at very carefully. Not only the 5 that are provided by the Rhode Island Department of Education. We need to look very closely at the data. I would like to be able to see the data that is going to be used to make any curriculum changes to this excellent, extraordinary curriculum that already exists. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Chris Tingley. I live at 750 Hatchery Road. I have 3 children that are currently in the school system, one that's about to graduate this year. And before I begin, I want to congratulate the school committee and the superintendent for providing such an excellent graduation for our seniors this year. I think that deserves a round of applause. I'm here on behalf of, I'm reading a speech from Jacob Kreider. He's a friend of ours, and he was unable to attend this meeting today. He's a graduating senior, and I've been asked to read the speech that he, the form that he typed up regarding affinity groups. It is my understanding that the DEI subcommittee has made a proposal for affinity groups. I think it is important, before expressing my approval or disapproval of these groups, to explain just what these affinity groups really are. If you look it up on Google, you get a very generic explanation regarding how they are utilized by corporations. These are groups organized based on social, ethnic, and economic similarities. These affinity groups are divided up, and the goal is to help ideas flow from one affinity group to another and allow all socioeconomic backgrounds and ethnic backgrounds understand how more equitable and diverse workplace could be created. In other words, the belief is that dividing people up based on their socioeconomic status and ethnic status will help people come together. How this conclusion was ever come to is beyond me. This may be one of the most reaching solutions I have ever learned in my life. If you want to foster unity, diversity, and exchange of ideas among different groups of people, wouldn't you want them to work together in a unified, diverse group where they can directly exchange ideas? I think one of the most valuable parts of our pass-fail democracy class in North Kingstown High School is the fact that you are allowing people from every part of the socioeconomic spectrum to come together and discuss things such as society, justice system, lawmaking process, political standing, our political system, and more. These are people with all different levels of knowledge, grades, economic standings, and more sitting in one room together, having a discussion where nothing truly matters other than their participation. I learned more about equity gaps in the class and my AP Government and Politics class than I did in any other classes in high school. To divide students based on these factors would only make the problem worse. If you want to fix issues in diversity, equity, and more, find ways to get more students involved in things outside the classroom where they can interact, or even more pass-fail classes inside the classroom where they are graded based on their interaction and participation rather than their intelligence and the resources available outside the classroom, which would then allow them to succeed. I'm not sure what kind of backwards world we are living in by which separation is the solution to unity. I strongly urge you, as someone who has spent an entire 4 years at the North Kingston High School and actually experienced the environment, to move against these affinity groups and develop a solution that has people from all backgrounds in the same unified space.
Sir, I have to ask you to try to wrap it up if you could, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Unity is developed through unity. If you want to make lower-income students or minority students feel like they are part of the community, treat them like they are of the community, not that they are part of their own group that needs to be separated from the rest of their society in order to find solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Kim Lanaway. I live at 47 Sylvan Court. I think it's very difficult to come forward and talk about this topic because, unfortunately, the discourse is such that people who oppose the method in which some are trying to move students forward are labeled racists. I've experienced such a label recently by Greg Lasbog, who is the school committee chair. Last week, I sent an email to a number of people asking that they consider adding attendance for the graduation, which I was very happy happened. In my email, I accused the school of, or I basically made a comment to suggest that the seniors had been gypped out of their senior year of high school, and that I didn't want to see them gypped out of their graduation with the people that they love. The response that I got from Greg was as follows. I must point out that I find your use of the racial slur against the Roma people in your email extremely disturbing. If you did not realize the meaning of what you typed, I would suggest that you do some research online. If it was intentional, it reflects very poorly on your character. He was good enough not to CC everybody on the email, as he did not wish to publicly embarrass me if I was simply ignorant of the derogatory and offensive nature of my slang word choices. So I'd like to publicly apologize to all of the Roma students in North Kingstown for having used the word gypped, and I hope that I don't say anything racially offensive tonight. I sat through the DEI subcommittee meeting as they voted to create affinity groups. These groups were clearly based on skin color. Ironically, they are neither diverse, equitable, nor inclusive. Former students asserted that they had graduated years earlier from a school that was systemically racist. They provided no facts, data, or even anecdotal stories to support their claims. I wonder if they felt that way at the time or if they had been taught that since they left. One student said, quote, she wants to ask white parents what it felt like, what it's like to feel like you don't belong. I would like to tell that student that that's a very common feeling for adolescents. I was an adolescent once, I'm a parent, I'm a high school teacher, and these feelings are pretty normal and not limited to black and brown students. I grew up in a town that was mostly white. I'm a white person. I was on welfare. My father was an alcoholic. I was raised by a single mother. I had nothing in common with the people around me just because I was white. Separating into color-based groups presumes that kids who look the same have the same likes, dislikes, needs, experiences, and aspirations. This just isn't true, and I would certainly hope the adults in the room would be front and center in acknowledging the dangers of such stereotyping based on skin color. The RIDE report on civil rights violations from 2015 to 2018 for North Kingstown shows 0 suspensions related to cases of harassment or bullying based on race, gender, religion, or country of origin. I would ask that the school committee publish and publicly analyze the data that is currently available from the RIDE, including civil rights data, survey works data on school climate, union complaints on unfair hiring, outcomes by groups, administration, faculty, and coaching demographics, assessment of graduation data by demographics. Where is the data showing the need for your root cause analysis that you purport to spend money on? I myself did a quick dive, and I
have to
found
ask you to wrap it up, please.
I found a significant disparity in graduation rates between Hispanic and white students. 81% versus 93%. That's significant. I did another quick free data search and produced metrics on chronic absenteeism. 19% absenteeism, chronic, for Hispanic students compared to 10% for white students. You can't teach students who aren't in school. Perhaps the absenteeism accounts for this disparity and not the catch-up that's there before we hire a group that is clearly biased. The groups that were
Again, I'd have to ask you to please wrap it up.
mentioned the other day, before we hire outside groups to analyze data we already have.
Thank you.
So my name is Georgine Edwards. I live at 24 Saunders Road in Saunderstown, and I actually didn't come intending to speak tonight. I came intending to listen because I heard that there was going to be some controversy. I have to say that I had a hard time listening because a lot of the people who are presenting one particular point of view were talking so much throughout the early part of the meeting and the presentation. So I do wonder how much other people were able to hear and how much people are really listening to each other here today instead of just coming to talk and present their own point of view. I also have been an educator. I'm now retired, but I spent 31 years being a teacher and administrator, mostly in private schools. I have to say those schools have been working on diversity, equity, and inclusion issues for decades. Affinity groups should not feel like a threat to anyone. Your college alumni office is an example of an affinity group. I'm sad to hear that so many people here feel threatened by phrases like diversity, equity, inclusion, affinity. I do feel, having experienced it firsthand for a long time, they have to be done thoughtfully, with sensitivity, and with very sensible oversight. I think there have to be guidelines. I would think that students in such groups would have to be have faculty advisors, just the way they do for the school newspaper, for their coaches for their sports teams, and all kinds of other school-sanctioned clubs and events. I trust this school committee and this superintendent and these administrators to handle this in a sensible, sensitive, and thoughtful way. And I feel, as the parent of 2 graduates, and my husband and I are also the godparents of 2 current students in North Kingstown Public Schools, the whole aim is to make them graduate as thoughtful, questioning, listening people. And I can't think of anything better than a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee to accomplish that aim. But again, it has to be done carefully, and I'm grateful that you are doing it with open meetings and transparently so that people can see how it's being done, and I intend to remain involved. Thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Halcyon Westall at 595 Hamilton Allenton in North Kingstown. Both of my children attended North Kingstown Public Schools. And I'm also in support of the DEI subgroup and support the idea of adding affinity groups to our school experience. Affinity groups are an opportunity for people to come together based on their shared identities. Just like other school clubs like sailing or robotics or environmental clubs, they meet to share their interests. Affinity groups give participants a space to meet with others in community around their common identity. To equate affinity groups with critical race theory is a false comparison. I'm not a legal scholar, but my basic understanding is that critical race theory is a legal framework that examines the intersection of policy and legal decisions with race and how our institutions are part of shaping society. It's something taught in grad school or college. And bringing up critical race theory in this context is a distraction. The organization where I work has offered affinity groups for the past 2 years. These groups, are not mandatory, just like the proposed school affinity groups would not be mandatory. They have been an opportunity at my workplace for colleagues to have conversations in a relaxed setting. I'm part of the White and European Descent Affinity Group at my workplace. We meet monthly, and we choose to discuss how our work and our lives are impacted by race. I've found it a helpful space for me to learn and to grow. One thing that's useful about participating in affinity groups is that as I and my other white colleagues develop our understanding and our competence in talking about these issues, we're not causing harm to our colleagues who are Black, Indigenous, or people of color with unintentional missteps in our speech or in our actions. It's important that my understanding of growth does not come at a cost to my colleagues. Our children also deserve to have a space for gathering and growth and easy conversation, if they choose to meet together. Affinity groups provide a time free from exhausting emotional labor that students who have been marginalized may carry in their whole community settings. Affinity groups are not scary. There's no hidden agenda. And as I understand it, the youth are simply asking for these groups because they need them. And I think that we should believe them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Elisa Hernandez. I live at 1259 Lafayette Road, and I am the daughter of Carlos Hernandez, who previously spoke. I'm here as both a student and a member of the Racial Equity Alliance group that is formed here at this school. So I would just like to clear up some misconceptions about this group, because it seems that a lot of people are thinking that it is aiming to divide, which it is not. It is meant to be a safe place for students who have their voices talked over and overlooked, because this town and district is so white dominated. Those 10% of students who are never seen, who are constantly targeted and bullied and dealing with so many things, mental health, and just all of it, they deserve a chance to have their voices heard and to have their ideas and needs met, because they are people. They should not have to be afraid every day coming into school knowing that there's barely anybody in this school who looks or sounds or is in any way like them. physically or is treated the same way that they are. This group allows anyone to join, not just specific races or people from specific income backgrounds. Anyone is free to join and discuss racial inequity in the school and what they think can be done to change it. It is in no way harming any of the students, parents, or citizens of this town or school district. It is bringing people together and allowing people to feel heard for once. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Betsy Dwyer. I live at 17 Johnson Avenue. I am here tonight not as a parent. I don't have any children in the school, but my background is in education. I have a master's of education, and I have been a teacher. That's not really my career. I'm actually working right now as a licensed mental health clinician. I have a private practice, and I work in a community and mental health setting. So I see a lot of the things that the previous speaker was talking about, as well as, I believe the first speaker's name was Lori, some of the things that she sees in her work. What brought me here tonight was my interest in education, and I have adult children who, maybe I'm going to have grandchildren in this school one day. So I have that interest. There were two things. I had heard that there is a group against indoctrination, and that just set off a bunch of red flags in my mind. Like, what do you mean indoctrination? I actually had to go and look up the word because I don't understand how there can be a group against this indoctrination when there isn't any indoctrination as far as things that I've read about and talked to people about. There is no indoctrination going on. That's when you're teaching people not to question. And as far as I understand about education, I am 65, so I can claim some time in the educational system, and in my lived experience, education is about questioning. And it's also about curiosity. And we need to learn from differences. How can we learn? Education is what schools are teaching people to learn, and how can we learn if we don't learn from our differences? So one, that I wanted to speak to that, and the second thing was I'm here to support this idea of these affinity groups, and if they need to have a different name so that people understand what they're really about, okay. But I'm in support of these kinds of groups for the very reason of bringing people together. Let's share our differences. Let's have the students share their differences, their backgrounds, learn from each other, have their differences appreciated, supported, not something that separates us and puts us into silos where we can't learn from each other. My kids had the benefit of going to school overseas, and they went to international schools, and they were exposed to many different cultures, languages, religions, and they made friends with people from those backgrounds. And they have developed a curiosity and a love of questioning that has helped them in their lives and their careers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Izzy Montini, and I live at 70 Bethany Lane, North Kingstown. Over time, it has become evident that we need to be actively anti-racist to defeat racism as a whole. Being complacent is simply not enough. Acknowledging the problem and working to defeat racism within the town is more brave and productive than refusing to believe that racism exists. The DEI subcommittee and TANK seek to educate our community so we can have a more inclusive school system and a more inclusive North Kingstown. This could be relative to race, gender identity, sexual orientation, you name it. I think that our school system is, performing excellently, and I just think that we can always be working to make our school system better and to be making it more equitable for all. And working to make our town and our school more anti-racist is one of the best things that we can do to promote a better learning environment for all students. These affinity groups work to give all students a voice, for experiences to be shared, and to provide opportunities for beneficial dialogue. Those who are afraid of this type of movement are afraid of 21st century principles. Ignorance is no longer a choice, and change is what comes next. This change should be promoted and not shut down and discouraged. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Campbell, and I live in Ferry Road in Saunderstown. And I have been all at these meetings. I think I was at the last in-person meeting and have been at every meeting since we were not having our kids attend school full-time. So I've been pretty vocal. I was accused last school committee meeting about yelling and screaming because I got emotional because my child was quarantined for 10 days as a senior in high school, and as far as asymptomatic testing. So I've been on this kick for asymptomatic testing for a good 8 months. I did want to recognize tonight that there were 16 antigen and PCR tests that were safety one recalled. As a parent who was mandated to have my child test, those recalls haven't been identified why they're at a safety level 1, but it's very concerning as a parent. But why I'm bringing that in is because I think it's important for us to be able to speak our concerns. I appreciate the opportunity to come up and be able to share these. If I was a little emotional last week, as Marianne recommended, that when I spoke to, was called out for being too emotional, I think that's a problem. As a member of the community, as somebody who's been my children have been in the school system, we should feel comfortable standing up in front of everybody and saying that, yeah, we should be able to talk about this stuff. This is the most divisive I have felt in this town since I've been here. We're looked at as one group, no one's clapping for another group, people don't want to sit next to us. I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. So I'm observing this tonight. And my role as a parent here is to be able to express what we disagree with and what we generally are concerned about as parents and what I want my child to learn as opposed to what another parent wants their child to learn. We should be able to talk about these things. We should be able to express our concerns. We should be able to express concerns about maybe what type of books are getting pushed by the English department, maybe what they're reading in history. If it doesn't feel right for me, like the asymptomatic testing, it didn't feel right to me, so I should be able to communicate to you as our elected officials. I should be able to have some dialogue with our elected officials about that. We should have transparency. We should be able to have these things presented and be able to ask questions without being looked at like we're crazy. I think I was probably looked at that I was crazy 9 months ago when I said I wasn't comfortable with my child being tested. I wasn't comfortable with my kid wearing a mask playing a sport. But that stuff is coming out now. And maybe this stuff will come out with critical race theory that maybe it may not be the best interest for all of the kids in the school. The DEI group, I'm not that familiar with it, to be completely honest with you. I want to learn more about it. I want you to be more transparent with your community so we know what is happening. Can we have some conversation about it? Can we get feedback about it? Can we learn more about it? And I think, I appreciate the opportunity to be able to come up and talk about that, but as a community, I think it's really important that we come together, and we're not together right now. So this is not really working not only for our children, but also for our community. I'm feeling, we should be able to come up and feel comfortable sharing our concerns. So I thank you for that opportunity, and that's it.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Grace McCrell, and my address is 100 Misty Meadow Lane. I'm a rising junior at NK, and I'm from the North Kingstown High School Racial Equity Alliance, which was formed by students and Miss Boysclair, who's a teacher at North Kingstown. Basically, our group provides a safe space for students of color and their allies to have conversations, learn about race, and the impact it has at our school. Critical race theory is different from what our alliance is. Critical race theory was constructed to focus on the realities that people of color face by illuminating the elements of racism that pervade societal structures in the U.S. today. It should not be surprising that historical events that are dehumanizing, such as slave trade in the U.S. or the genocide of the first Americans have long-lasting impacts on our society. What critical race theory asks is that we consider these impacts, that we look at the remains of the norms that were established when only white men were granted citizenship, the right to vote, and to own property, that we assess how these norms still disadvantage people of color today in a predominantly white town. This is even more important. The only way we can make America better is if we take a look critically how our economic, educational, political, and criminal justice systems affect the lived experiences of all American citizens, based on all the races of those citizens. As a student, I'm extremely disappointed in the bigotry that's being shown from the adults in our town tonight. Our group is simply a safe space and inclusive to everyone. I'm 100% Irish, and I joined to learn and educate and come together with other kids. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Joe Vento, 40 Cassandra Lane. It's nice to see you all again. I find myself here tonight to support the efforts made by the DEI subcommittee and to reiterate that it's crucial to promote equality, nonviolence, and maybe most importantly, coexistence during a time when there seems to be quite a bit of national turmoil unfolding over the fate of social studies and English curricula. It's important for students to see administrators and educators advancing inclusivity, diversity in our curriculum, and diversity in representation. And in the past, I've had the opportunity to speak about student voice, how student involvement is vital to school improvement, and how educators have an ethical imperative to engage students as active partners in school improvement. Hopefully you can see how those themes are kind of related. I think it's worth noting that the affinity group mentioned tonight is open to any NKHS student who would like to join. It's in our best interest as students to learn about a myriad of cultures and practices so we can be productive participants in life outside our immediate community. I look forward to seeing what the DEI subcommittee can provide for students, faculty, and staff district-wide. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Howard Brown. I live at 230 Lantern Lane East in North Kingstown. This is a good school. My daughter graduated in 2000, and she went on to graduate college with Phi Beta Kappa. So you guys did a good job. I want to talk about process. I don't want to talk about is this racist, is that racist? Are we bigots because there is this disagreement? That doesn't take us anywhere. This process of DEI in North Kingstown is out of control. It is not transparent. There have been 2 meetings of the DEI subcommittee. As of this afternoon, no minutes of either meeting had been released to the public. I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding is they are out of compliance with the Open Meetings Act. And that says to me that the co-chairs, who should know better, either have something to hide or they think their work doesn't concern the public, that they know best. That's part of the reason there is such divisiveness around the question of DEI. I think it's fair to demand the immediate release of those minutes of both meetings, unless they've been released this afternoon. I think it's also fair to expect a public hearing on all recommendations that are transmitted from the DEI subcommittee to yourselves before you make any decisions on any of them. Because the DEI subcommittee is essentially based on a divisive idea, and it is divisive, of equity and not equality. Equity is not the same thing as equality. Our country and society were based on equality. The school committee should appoint a similar committee with a non-racist outlook to address problems such as there's a curriculum known as 1776 Unites. And that would represent true diversity in terms of how we deal with education by bringing in another set of recommendations with another point of view other than the DEI marching orders. So I just want to wrap up with a formal request. I believe that according to Rhode Island General Law 42-46-6, I'm requesting the North Kingstown School Committee to discuss the DEI subcommittee authority per your policy tonight as an additional agenda item per Rhode Island General Law 42-46-6. And I'd like to hand a copy of this request to the clerk and to the chair of this school committee. Thank you.
Thank you. You can hand it to our attorney over there for me. Sir, go ahead.
Hi, Don Thielen, 241 West Allenton Road. The reason I showed up here tonight was to find out...
Can you raise that microphone a little? Sorry, it's harder to hear you. There you go.
The reason I showed up here tonight is I wanted to find out more about the programs. And I didn't find out anything about the programs. Basically, I'm wondering why we are trying to raise such fragile children. Why we insist on grouping people into this group, that group. Everyone in here is different. There's bald people, there's Spanish people. Why do we have to have individual groups for groups? It's not the library, it's not the, the card case file where there's A, B, C, and D. Everybody has problems in their lives. Everyone has problems being brought up, the way they're brought up, the way that they're taught by their parents. Morality. It's not up to the school boards or the school department to teach morality. It's a parent's job. And frankly, a lot of the parents have given up their responsibility on teaching morality. It's got to stop. Enough is enough. Are we going to have 2 separate buildings here, 3 separate buildings, 4 separate buildings because someone doesn't want to go through a doorway that another person went through? Because they're a different race or a different color or they're missing a leg or a limb? How far does this go? Your job is to teach math, English, history as it actually happened. Your job is not to teach morality. That's parents' jobs. Get together with parents, get them doing their jobs, and you do yours. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Katie Gabriel Black. I live at 140 Burnt Cedar Drive in North Kingstown. I'm a developmental psychologist and an educator, among other identities, and I am a member of the DEI committee. When I saw the call for applications for the committee, I was very excited. I've been in town for 4 years. I'm looking for ways to get involved, and this is one way that I can use my skill set to make this town and to help our children become better. It also fits my skill set because I'm a researcher who studies children who identify as LGBTQ and how best to support them, including through affinity groups. I want to speak to the kids in this room, though. We've been speaking to the adults. But I want the kids in this room, the students who are currently here, to know that there are adults in town who care about them, who are here to help them, to support them, to make sure that we have an inclusive school environment. And I will do what I can to help make the school system better and to help you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Ann Sullivan. I live at 390 Boston Eck Road. I have 2 children who have been through North Kingstown School, one currently, and I'm also a licensed mental health provider, LICSW. I want to state my support today for affinity groups and the honest discussion of the history and racism of ongoing marginalization of minorities in our community and country. I'm an active advocate of the LGBTQ community, and here's the biggest reason why I support these groups in schools is that although I treat anxiety and depression and a variety of issues, the most important part of my job in 25 years of working with children and adolescents is preventing suicide. The risk factors that contribute to suicide are isolation, feeling misunderstood and judged, feeling different, feeling rejected. After the pandemic, we saw a 40% increase in the mental health needs of our children in the large medical agency that I work at. For that reason alone, we cannot justify shutting down opportunities for our teens to feel safe and supported. Standing against anti-racist groups, pro-BIPOC groups, and LGBT groups, I feel will put our kids in danger because it threatens to further isolate the youth who are already marginalized. Decades of science and social studies support and validate accepting people's differences within culture and race, accepting sexual orientation, and supporting all marginalized communities. If this science is not enough of a reason, can we base it on health and wellness? Can we at least agree that our health and wellness of our kids has to be primary? And I can stand up here today and say that if a child feels isolated, alone, different, and misunderstood, or rejected by society, they are in danger. They have an increased risk of taking their own lives or becoming very sick with depression or anxiety. You can say I'm being dramatic, but me and my colleagues are seeing this in the mental health field every single day. And children have been maybe never been more anxious and depressed and suicidal as they are after this pandemic. I think we can all relate to that and recognize that. So why would we waste our energy right now standing in the way of anything that could help our children feel supported? Why create a more isolated condition for a student instead of giving them a place where they could feel like there are others like them and give all of us the opportunity to learn from each other? So please don't make my job and other mental health professionals' jobs harder right now. Support this healthy and growth-oriented movement in our schools. It's not indoctrination, it's just growth, and it's for our children's health. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Susanna Tingley, 750 Hatchery Road. I wasn't prepared to come here and speak, so I don't have a really big speech. I just want to say critical race theory scares me as a mom. My husband said our oldest just graduated. I have 2 more kids coming through the school system. NK is a great school system, but I have found once you're out of the elementary end of it, they don't want a lot of parent input. I feel there's a lot of pushback. I would just ask that you provide communication. You hear about this on the news. We've seen it all over, South Kingstown, Narragansett. Now it's in our town, and it's scary to me. I don't want to see the academics change. I feel we can support our children. And I think you also need to think about the kids that maybe aren't in those minority groups. I have a child that sat in the class who has felt isolated, minimized, and scared to talk because their opinion was not the popular opinion. So you need to look at everybody. And I just ask that you involve parents. Please involve us. Please keep the communication open because I don't feel it's been there. And I don't have the funds to pull my kids out and put them in private school. So this is our education, and I ask that you let us be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Jordan Albanaz, 109 Mount View Road in Narragansett. I know I don't live in North Kingstown. I am a teacher here. I just wanted to share not my personal opinion, but a student who emailed me who wanted me to share the story. So they said, and I'm going to redact their name. I'm sure that there's, someone will file suit to find out what their name is, but my name is CD, and I am a student at NKHS and a member of the subcommittee. I am sorry that I cannot make it here tonight to share my support for the student affinity groups. These groups are organized by students to support students who want to participate in them. They are not for the purpose of indoctrinating anyone. Affinity groups can help students who feel unwelcome. In my experience, there is a lot of negativity in North Kingstown schools, and this is especially true for anyone who is considered different. Affinity groups can help balance out some of that negativity. Thank you for considering my student opinion. Thank you, C. And on a personal level, I don't see any other class clubs or activities that are being investigated at the moment. It just seems to be this one. So on a personal level, thank you for all that you do, and continue the good work. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Emma Michaud, and I live at 80 Boone Street in North Kingstown. I'm a member of the NKHS Racial Equity Alliance, and I'll be a junior at NK next year. As I listened to some people speak tonight, it was reaffirmed in my mind the necessity for the DEI subcommittee in North Kingstown. I acknowledge that NK is a predominantly white school, and too many times this has prevented the voices of people of color and other minorities within the school from being heard. The students at this school deserve a place to come and tell their story and share experiences without fear of judgment or the fear that they will not be listened to or taken seriously. Coming together to stop the racism and discrimination against any minority group, including LGBTQ+ and BIPOC members of the school community, is a necessity. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you understand the student point of view.
Thank you.